All right. Uh, call this meeting to order. I'm calling this meeting to order. This meeting is the Board of Chiropractic Examiners Government and Public Affairs Committee. It is being held by teleconference in accordance with the provisions of Government Code Sections 11123.5. Committee members are participating virtually today from remote locations, and board staff is presenting at the following primary physical location: Department of Consumer Affairs, El Dorado Room, 1625 North Market Boulevard, Suite N22 or 220, Sacramento, California 95834. The date is Monday, December 16, 2024, and the time is 3:03 p.m. The board's paramount responsibility is to protect the health, welfare, and safety of the public through licensure, education, engagement, and enforcement in chiropractic care. Members of the public may address the committee during the public comment session. Public comments will also be taken on agenda items at the time the item is heard and prior to the committee taking any actions on said items. Those who would like to provide public comment will be limited to 3 minutes unless in the discretion of the committee circumstances require a longer period. Members of the public will not be permitted to yield their allotted time to other members of the public to make comments. Individuals may appear before the committee to discuss items not on today's agenda. However, the committee may not discuss or take action on these items except to decide whether to place the matter on an agenda of a future meeting. Please be aware that this meeting is being recorded, and please turn off or silence all cell phones. We will now take roll call. I'll go ahead and take it. Jeanette Cruz, present. Dr. Paris?
Present, I believe do we need to confirm our address and
Oh,
if any members of the public present also?
Dr. Paris, no, this is an advisory committee meeting, so we have
Okay.
our public location at Consumer Affairs, but then the members are participating remotely, and then staff will confirm, but I don't believe there's any members of the public present at the El Dorado room.
Okay, great. Thank you for that.
perfect. All
Okay, let me keep going then. Dr. Paris present.
right. Dr. Sandino?
Dr. Sandino present.
All right, thank you. So we do indeed have a quorum. All right, so let me see. What is the first item we have today? We called roll call, public comments for items not on the agenda. Okay. So for this item, what's it called? You may address the committee. Members of the public may address the committee at this time. If you kind of join on, we advise that the public identifying yourself as voluntary. Your name will be recorded on the official minutes of the meeting if it's provided during your comment. So moderator, go ahead and open up for public comment.
We are now open for public comment for items not on the agenda. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users are going to dial *3 to raise their hand. And for our mobile device users, you may need to hit the ellipses button, that's the ... in order to raise your hand. People will be given 3 minutes to speak, and I'll give you a 15-second warning before your time expires. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment for items not on the agenda. Seeing no request, do you wish to continue with the agenda?
Yes, please. Thank you. The next is review and possible approval of the December 4, 2023 committee meeting minutes. So I can open this one for discussions if there's any questions. It's been a bit of time. There was a lot, kind of in going back to those meeting minutes, there was a lot of meaty information in it, kind of things that we wanted to start kind of getting into with the governance committee. So I'll kind of take a moment if there's any questions. If not, the team is welcome to put a motion on the floor.
I would motion to approve.
I second.
This is Sabina. Can I interrupt and ask that the motion please have the date of the committee meeting minutes?
Oh.
Thank you.
Dave?
Sorry, coming off mute, sorry. Motion to approve the December 4th, 2023 committee meeting minutes.
And I second. And let's go ahead and open this up for public comment.
We are now open for public comment on the motion. If you'd like to make a comment on the meeting minutes, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users, dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request, do you wish to continue with the motion?
Yes, please. Right. What's it called? Dr. Paris, would you be open to taking roll for a vote?
Yes, sure. Dr. Cruz?
Yes.
Dr. Paris, yes. And I'm sorry, did I say Dr. Cruz, Ms. Cruz? Forgive me.
Yes.
Dr. Paris, yes. And Dr. Sandino?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. On to agenda item number 4, update on board's administration program, including budget and fund condition, business modernization, and status of board's pending rulemaking packages, and 2022 to 2026 strategic plan objectives. All right, heading over to Ms. Walker.
Sure, thank you, and good afternoon, committee members. So I have a few items to highlight today during the admin program update. I'll start with the budget because that's going to be actually the shortest update for today. The budget condition statement that you see in the meeting materials is a carryover from our discussion at the October 24th board meeting. The reason for that being upcoming on January 10th will be when the governor is releasing the proposed budget for next year. And at that point, the department's budget office will provide us with an updated fund condition statement reflecting a more accurate estimation of our expenses this fiscal year, as well as projecting out into the next fiscal year. As far as our overall fund condition our overall fund condition for this fiscal year is very stable. We have quite a few cost savings as a result of the staff vacancies. And then we've also been just around our expectations for our spending at the AG's office, unlike in years past when we had spent a significant dollar amount on our disciplinary cases. We've really returned back to our normal level. So we're seeing cost savings in our personnel costs and then also on our enforcement side. As far as the fund condition itself, aside from just our general business expenses, this fiscal year, the only item of note that we've spent money on is upgrading our IT equipment and getting new laptops for staff. That was a deferred maintenance type item that had gone on for about a decade, and we really hit the point where we really needed to invest in some new equipment so that staff can effectively do their jobs and not be having to put in so many IT tickets to get their equipment repaired. So we made a one-time purchase to get everybody up to speed for now, and then we're working with our budget analyst to incorporate an ongoing maintenance line item for future years so that we're not kind of having to purchase them all at once again in about 3 to 4 years out. So as far as and the other item of note as it comes to the budget is when we had the last update at the October board meeting, we were in a bit of a holding pattern with Department of Finance and the idea around having to potentially cut positions. We've gotten the green light to go ahead and proceed with our recruitments for our staff positions. So we are now actively recruiting for 5 of the 6 vacancies that we have. We are withholding 1 staff services analyst position that was originally in the licensing unit, and then we were proposing to put it in the administration unit. And that's the position that's likely earmarked to be removed or for us to lose in the next fiscal year. So we're going to be holding it vacant this year, and then come next fiscal year, we're very likely to lose it. But of all the staff positions we have, we can absorb that workload. The plan is just to spread it across some of the analyst positions that we have in the admin unit, the licensing unit, and absorb a little bit for that staff services manager 1 that's over that position. So then the couple other items I'd like to highlight today. I'll start with within the meeting materials, a lot of focus is just on, and you're going to see that on today's agenda as well, is looking into 2025 and just planning ahead. 2025 is going to be a very big year for us. We'll get into that in the next agenda item around sunset, but just laying some of the dates out there. We need to reschedule our next board meeting. Our original planned date of January 9th, we no longer have a quorum. So I'll be sending out a poll so I can get some board member availability and get that on the calendar as soon as possible. And then we've got our other quarterly meetings further out into 2025 have all been scheduled. A few other key dates that we're looking at as the year is going to progress is some of the travel restrictions that were in effect in prior fiscal years, just due to the fund conditions, are no longer there. We still have to get special approval for out-of-state travel, but we are seeking that because we really need to have BCE more involved at the FCLB and the NBCE annual meetings and involved in some of the test development activities. So we're working through the approval processes to get approval to send 2 representatives to the FCLB NBCE annual meeting, as well as the regional meeting that's going to be in Nebraska in the fall. And then we're also going to be working on getting an exemption to one of the department policies on examination development so that we can get board member participation in that Part 4 test development committee and standard setting workshop over the summer. I've also included in the materials just some key dates as we look at the next legislative session. The one to note for now, there's actually 2. So as I mentioned, January 10th is when the budget bill will be released publicly. And that's when we'll have more updated budget numbers that we can share with the committee members and also with the public. And then February 21st is the last day for bills to be introduced for this next year's legislative session. So that's going to be a key date because generally just right after that time frame is when staff is sorting through hundreds of new bills and trying to, basically determine which ones affect DCA and which ones affect BCE. That workload is going to then come down to this committee as we filter through those bills, and we're going to the committee to kind of vet through them and filter them further for potential board positions at the April meeting. The other item of note for the legislature is they have new rules this year. So each author can now only carry 35 bills instead of 50. So it'll remain to be seen the effect in the legislature, but very likely that we'll see more targeted and focused bills and a few less of the more just kind of placeholder bills or just good ideas, but not fully urgent or maybe the most fiscally sound proposals. So that's what we'll see with legislation. Then let's see what else here. The biggest remaining workload that we've had, it's been all through 2024. It's likely going to sustain into early 2025 is around all of our regulations. So the list kind of continues to grow, if you will. We've got 10 that are considered in the production phase. So that means that the board's approved text and staff needs to compile all the documents to get them out to public comment and really formally kickstart the rulemaking process. We're actually quite close to having 3 of those packages in the initial filing phase, which is basically step 3 of 4 for those packages. And then those 10 that are right now in production, all 10 of those are the ones that we're looking at getting out to public comment in early 2025. Then as we start looking at that list and concept, we have a pretty significant number that's going to be likely going to the board in February and then going back out for public comment as we look into mid to late 2025. So that list, as far as the ideas and working through them, is it's moving along and is progressing through those phases. It's the same update that I'm going to be giving at every committee meeting. As far as when we're looking at 2025, we've really gotten through a lot of the policy discussions of these pending proposals. Some of them have a few just more minor items for discussion, but we really are opening up an opportunity now for the what's next for each of our committees, particularly when you talk about continuing education, licensing, and enforcement. What do they want to focus on next? And I'll get into it in a little bit with some of the items that are on this committee's agenda, where there's maybe some opportunities for some collaboration or delegation of certain outreach items now to those committees, now that they've worked through a lot of these policy items. Also within the meeting materials, there's an updated version of the strategic plan of our action plan and tracking. Keep in mind that at the October board meeting, the board had made some minor adjustments and adopted an amended strategic plan. So those new objectives are reflected here in this status update. For the most part, we're on target for a lot of these, or I would say that we're progressing quite well with a lot of these strategic plan items. We're a little bit behind some of the anticipated timeframes that we wanted to get things done when we put the plan together, but many of these items are still in motion. And some of them, it's kind of the phrasing of the item or the success measure may show still in progress, but really a lot of progress has been done within those items. I'm looking like particularly at, if you look at strategic plan objective 1.2 about establishing the licensing committee, we've done a lot of work on getting licensing committee going and getting objectives and getting movement on those items. But yet, sometimes, like training the licensing lead position is still vacant. So we've yet to do that specific item on the plan. So just a lot of work there on our strategic plan that I wanted to cover. And then the last item I wanted to talk about a little bit, and this is another one where there's some opportunity, I think, for some delegation to other committees of some of the workload, is around business modernization. So we've been working on the implementation of our Connect system now we're almost at year 5, I believe. And we've implemented the basic functionality of our licensing workflows. We have enforcement now built out in the system. And really the next big piece is continuing education. We had previously had that on hold as the vendor had offered to upgrade us to a new version of the software. Unfortunately, the vendor no longer has those resources to get that done on a very convenient schedule for us. So we're going to move forward with developing continuing education in the current version of our software. And I actually had a really good discussion with DCA's Chief Information Officer about kind of what our needs are with continuing education and how we can get it done. Because we've taken a few different approaches of what we're going to prioritize. And it was initially thought to be, let's prioritize the dashboard and getting the workflow done. But outside of the Connect system, staff's implemented a paperless review and approval process for all the continuing education courses. And we're seeing the immediate need and also something that we can immediately address being a more helpful public course search option for our licensees. So had a good discussion about DCA about what that could look like. The acupuncture board has an existing course search functionality maintained in Connect. It's open to the public and you can search and filter and find courses that you want, as opposed to what we have, which is just a PDF document that has to be scrolled. So there's the potential for doing it in Connect, but the discussion with DCA is, let's put our heads together. There might be something that actually DCA can build for us in the interim to get us a more robust license or CE course search functionality on the website, and then not have to take from the Connect resources. So kind of happy to explore that a little bit further and should have a really more concrete update for the board at the next meeting on what that could look like. But the primary focus there is around continuing education. And also on business modernization, last week at our CE committee meeting, there's a pretty robust discussion around the utilization rates for the Connect system for our licensees compared to other boards. We had shared the statistic that as of Q1 of this fiscal year, we're at 41%, which is a slight improvement. We were closer to 30%. We've gone up a little bit. And then we've also updated all of our paper notifications that go out with the renewals to actually plug the Connect system and brand it as the preferred method of renewing online. The committee was asking a bit about what other boards see as far as their rates, and I had shared that some of them are quite high. I mean, you're talking about 90%, but it's high at that level because it's mandated. They don't send you the convenient package that you can just return with a check to renew your license. So there was a bit of discussion at that committee around, well, maybe we should look at creating some sort of a plan to transition to that type of model so that we kind of basically force the implementation of that system using that method. They had kind of drawn examples from like the Real ID implementation, where it's like you start warning licensees that at a certain point, you're no longer going to get these notices. You're going to have to go online. So that committee's got some interest there as well. And that's, I think that's a good spot where this committee's taking on a lot when it comes to outreach and implementation and tracking, but maybe we start looking at delegating certain projects within or sub projects, if you will, to some of the other committees. So a bit of just really updates as it comes to on the admin side, and happy to answer any questions that the committee might have.
Okay, I'll go. I have a question. The acupuncture link to that functionality, is that Connect? Is that
Yes, yeah, the acupuncture board's using Connect.
okay? So that's what we're viewing is what the Connect system would look like for us if we were to go model it
Yes.
after that.
Yes.
Okay. I liked it. I thought it was kind of nice to have a really broad search and then you could kind of narrow it down by putting in different categories, et cetera. And then really happy to see the FCLB, MBCE, and that staff. And thank you, Kristen and staff, for working with DCA to help us get to those testing committees. The development is not actually coming up with the questions, and so it's very important that we're in the room to impart, all the knowledge that we get from being in, the largest licensing state of chiropractors in the nation. So I think we're a valuable add, and we bring a lot back too. And the other thing was, what are some of, just briefly, what are some of the other thoughts on like incentives to renew online? I mean, is it only just, and if we, I mean, I'm just off the top of my head pretty supportive of the fact that at some point that has to be the future, and we kind of mandate that with a deadline, and but are there any other incentives? Do any other boards use incentives beyond? I'm trying to think of what else there might be, but
Pay for shipping for for paper materials, I imagine, or
Yeah, there's the cost savings on the board side by printing less notifications. There's also the cost savings to licensees for not having to mail in the renewal. I would say some of the boards, and we've tried to really encourage using the system. So we actually absorb the credit card transaction fees for the online renewals, because some boards are passing those on to licensees. So it's actually costing you more to renew online. We did some of the math there, and it's, the less staff time of having to manually input and process your renewal is offset by that transaction fee. So we've actually absorbed it into our budget. And the biggest selling point, I would say, for the online renewal, and that we're going to be really making sure we get that message out to licensees, is you don't lose it. So you make your renewal payment online. You get the instant approval notification that we've gotten your payment, and your license status then rolls forward within 1 to 2 business days, and you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to worry about I mailed a check and my license never went through. And you also have real-time documentation that you made that payment. So if for some reason there's a glitch in the system and you never roll over, you have something to provide us as proof, like, hey, I renewed. And then we go and we fix it. Whereas like we deal with a lot of licensees that mailed something in and it wasn't certified, and they tell us they sent it and they end up in forfeiture status, and they can't prove that they actually sent us that check. So that's the other side of it. Is just it's easier. It gives you more proof, just like paying any other bill, that you actually did make that payment timely.
okay, yeah, that makes sense. So okay, thank you.
question I have is, you talked about the 5 of 6 positions that we're getting the green light to proceed on. Where are those positions, kind of, where are those positions mainly focused in on, and where do you kind of, is there, how do I say this? And with how much, I would say, with the level of workload we're really going to be having on the rulemaking area, and just all those, do you anticipate it helping with where there's a lot of weight right now?
It'll help substantially. So of the 5 positions, 2 of them are technician positions that support our administration and our licensing units. And then the other three are those lead positions that we've been really pushing to be able to get for each of the units. So to have a lead position in admin, a lead position in licensing and continuing education, and then a lead position in enforcement. We're at a position now with the staff that we currently have that they're processing license applications well. We're working on enforcement cases. We're doing all of our general business functions quite well, but the need is around the policy area. And that's where it's like substantially falling on like management versus staff. So that's going to fill that void quite well is by getting those lead positions in place and then being able to also offer them some career development in exchange. So it's not going to, as far as our licensing and our enforcement numbers, we'll see a moderate improvement, but a lot of that benefit is going to be on the policy side for committing or for supporting these committees and the board work.
Okay. And for, you mentioned that one of the positions is going to be held back, kind of the SSA position, and what's it called? And you mentioned that the team was earmarked to likely lose a position. Is that, I would say one, is that routine? Like, should we anticipate that in the future, or is this something that kind of really came out of the, I want to say, budget exercises um, and focus that we had this past year of, really finding opportunities for savings? Like, should we plan ahead for that? Is really what I'm going to be concerned on.
There's no need to plan. I would say for a further vacancy reduction. It was going into the last the last budget cycle when the legislature was faced with a pretty substantial deficit. They had come up with basically the governor proposed two ways to cut costs. One of which was an almost 8% cut in spending across the board, which didn't affect us too much because of our margins. We were able to just come up with a plan without it actually really feeling some substantial hit from that. Unlike other programs where if they're running much leaner or they don't have that cushion in there to cut costs that they're not, if they're spending every dollar they have, they're feeling it more than we are.
Yeah.
And then the other portion of that was around there was a vacancy reduction mandate to basically try to find cost savings in state government by being more efficient and eliminating unnecessary positions. So we did a drill where we justified our vacancies that we absolutely needed. And then we had one where, we could afford to give that up. But there's no reason to suspect that, in the future, they're going to be coming for one or two more on top of that.
Thank you. And then one last question for kind of the business modernization topic. Since we kind of the trouble around availability of vendor resources, now we're talking about kind of a possible in-house solution with do what do we see as a potential impact to the timeline there? At least with what we know now.
As of what we know now, think if we can get DCA, we're looking for something initially that we can get stood up rather quickly. So we're looking at really the beginning of, I would say, the first quarter of 2025 to be able to get a tool up and running. We're looking for something pretty basic to where we're loading data on the back end, just using a spreadsheet to begin with, and then as we develop further workflows, have it directly have the two systems basically directly connect. Having DCA develop it, we believe will have a faster timeline, and it also will save us from spending any money towards our maintenance and operations contract on the Connect project. And we can use those resources to actually build out the provider dashboard that we need in the system.
Okay, perfect. All right, thank you.
Hi. My question again is about the position that is void or vacant right now and probably going to be eliminated. You said then analysis or and then I just remember reading that in your notes you were saying that historically some of the board regulations had potential problems in the past because they went to the solution before the problem identification and analysis. So I kind of feel like that's my concern on getting rid of the one position you're saying was important before going to the problem solving, and giving that workload to everybody else. That it sounds like everyone has a lot of workload, although they're handling it great. And thank you to the board committee, everyone's doing great. But I'm just concerned on more workload of not having that position filled. I'm just curious on that. I know you said it's not needed, but it seemed like it was part of the beginning process to get to the solution better and more efficient.
Sure. So for that position that we had, it was a staff services analyst position that was originally a licensing analyst position. So it was processing. The person in that position was processing all of our licensing transactions, issuing licenses, and kind of just taking care of all of our licensing transactions that occur. We did an analysis of the actual workload, and we found that that position is actually those duties are more in line with a program technician level staff position. So we went through an effort to where we're taking those existing duties and actually putting them, allocating them at the correct level. And then the plan was, now what do we do with that SSA position, that analyst position? We were going to task that person with doing a lot of outreach and support for like our social media and our just our public outreach and some miscellaneous admin duties, managing our contracts and things to that effect. Since we're having to give that up, basically all of those ideas that we were going to put on that position, we're now splitting into across about 3 or 4 different positions so that they can kind of, we found areas where it was close enough in line with what those other analysts were already doing that they could potentially absorb. And then we also are finding that, you know, by losing that one position, we can make a little bit of space there for a manager level position to absorb some of the staff work, since they're giving up having an additional staff to actually supervise. So that's how it kind of works. It's kind of unfortunate, but it was one of those positions where you know, we were working with the budget office and coming up with a plan that would be approved by the Department of Finance, and we were in that position where you're going to have to give something up. So try to find that position where it's going to have they'll basically hurt the least. So that's how we selected that one.
Okay, thank you. So it's basically they divided everything. Everything will still be attended for, and it won't create more work on the other teams because you're dividing it to all the committees.
That's correct. Yeah.
Thank you.
I think that's all the questions. Um, let's go ahead and take it. This moderator, can we open this up for public comment?
Absolutely. We are open for public comment on agenda item 4. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users, dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the agenda?
Yes, please. Thank you. All right, moving on to agenda item number 5, review, discussion, and possible recommendation regarding an action plan to prepare for board's 2026 sunset review. All right, handing over to Ms. Walker again.
Thank you. So the board's currently scheduled for the sunset review hearing in 2026. So as of about right now, we're about 12 to 13 months out from when our next sunset review report is going to be due, and we're about 15 to 16 months out from our sunset review hearing. The sunset review process basically has 5 main phases, which I put in the meeting materials. And that sunset review report that I'm talking about that's due just about a year from now is really the first part of that process. So with that report, generally we'll be seeing next summer, either Assembly BNP or Senate BNP is going to send us a template. There's not a lot of changes from year to year on those questions, but they're going to send us a template that we would need to use to compile our sunset review report, submit it to the legislature, and then the Assembly or Senate BNP staff reviews our report. And they're going to basically issue out a background paper or an issue document to us, generally only about 2 weeks ahead of when we would be testifying at our sunset review hearing. And then we would have a hearing, and then we have our sunset bill. We work through the legislative process on our bill, and then anything that's included in there becomes effective January 1 of 2027. What we kind of the purpose of this agenda item is a little bit of lessons learned from the last sunset review, where we were really jamming there at the end. We had, I think, had some new even board members come on, and then they were immediately trying to turn around and review a report. There's a lot of opportunity here for us to really to work through this process with just an action plan, so that we can make sure that we're well prepared for our next sunset review, and we're not trying to do things at the last minute. So we put that in for a discussion here today, and then also sharing the same update for the board. Where I see the Government Public Affairs Committee being very helpful is kind of providing oversight of the process. Not all of the work of preparing for sunset review is going to fall on this committee. It's going to be really divvied up between staff and the committees in the different subject areas. But I think keeping the Government Public Affairs Committee, the ones providing the oversight through the process and ensuring that we're meeting deadlines, will be really crucial to our success for the next sunset review period. So I've kind of drafted together just a proposed action plan for discussion today. I really front loaded it with a lot of work going into Q1 and Q2 of 2025. Beginning with, of course, just starting to draft a report with what we know now, so we can start identifying areas where we need further discussion or questions or actions, or we can start assigning things out to committees as they're meeting in the spring and summer and get ahead of certain issues. And basically briefing the board and the committees on any of the remaining issues from our last sunset that still need to be addressed. One of which comes to mind is there was one of our new issues from the last sunset report that we're going to have to respond to, has to do with the composition of our board, and should there be more public members on it. So we are going to have an official response to that, so we can make sure that we get that on spring agenda and have the discussion, and then have something to respond and answer to that issue. Another thing that we're going to be doing this spring is just summarizing a lot of the key issues that came up, not only for our board, but for other boards at sunset hearings over the past few years. You want to make sure that we're getting the board and the committees up to date on just things that are of interest to the legislature, because you can generally assume that, if they're asking other boards, they'll likely ask us next spring. I'll be listening in on the 2025 hearings. Certainly going to brief the board and this committee on some of those current issues that are also coming up next year, so that we're prepared for 2026. Where we're going to need some additional work from the committee chairs is going to be around identifying any of the new policy issues that we need to include in our 2026 report. So like I was talking about during the admin program update, this board inherited a lot of old proposals that had been kind of stuck and stagnant, and each of the committees has taken up the task and jumped in there and gone through all the policy discussions and figured out the path forward for those proposals. And it basically creates a void now for what's next. We don't need to overload it with an equally long list of projects, but if there's certain policy areas or ways we can be more effective within our licensing, our continuing education, our enforcement programs, now is a good opportunity for the committees to start having those discussions and start laying the groundwork for potential work. And if we need a legislative solution, we can lay that out in our sunset review report. One item for a legislative solution that comes to mind is, so the licensing committee has been doing pretty thorough, robust discussions around kind of potentially moving away from the satellite office certificates and creating a new practice location type registration, where we're regulating at the establishment level rather than individual licensees for better tracking and better public information. Well, the missing piece to that proposal is fee authority for charging that. So if we want to do a facility permit, we've got to have some underlying statutory authority to charge a fee for that transaction. So that's one example to where if we can get most of our proposal done and identify the need for the fee, and we can get our cost analysis ready, we can present that issue to the legislature in our sunset report, so that we could potentially get that fee authority in our legislative bill. So by spring, we really need to start identifying any of those items that potentially we would need to be making a legislative ask, so we can start planning and preparing to put those in our sunset report. As we start looking further out, we've kind of earmarked, as far as the board meetings in 2025, there's going to be two key ones for the board's approval of our sunset report. it's going to be the July and the October board meetings. So we would like at the July board meeting to at least be able to share an initial draft of our sunset review report that the board can go through, ask questions if there's certain areas that we need to supplement with additional responses, or just any major issues that we need to talk about up front. We should be doing so at the July board meeting, so that when we get to October, we're really going to be seeking the board's final approval of that draft sunset report, maybe with a little delegation of authority, maybe to the chair and the vice chair to approve any other minor edits in between. But we really want to have that final report done by October of 2025. And like I said, that's that first phase, is doing that report and getting all the information together. The other thing that's going to be key and I'll be making sure to let the board know this year during the elections, but for our 2026 board officer positions, making sure the board's aware that the chair in 2026 is the person that testifies during our sunset review hearings. So making sure they're well aware of that. We could work on making sure that we're prepping whoever that person is, especially towards the end of the year when we have our nominations. We need to start. I would start helping to prepare them for that to testify before the legislature. I'm there as well, but the legislature really likes to hear from the board chairs, not the staff. So making sure that the board chair is well prepped for that hearing. And then a little bit of collaboration there after we go through the hearing in 2026. The board then has to respond in writing to all those issues that were identified in our background paper prior to the hearing. So gonna just making sure the board's aware and need flexibility on being able to call rather like a 1 or 2 hour teleconference meeting to go through those responses. And then the legislative process just goes from there. So the rest of 2026 is just going through the standard process of supporting our bill, working with the author's office to get what we need in there, and get our sunset bill passed for a start date of January 1, 2027. So a bit wordy, but I just wanted to make sure we were kind of identifying the different phases and what goes on in the sunset review process, and wanted to invite the committee to have a bit of a discussion around the action plan. Any input on it is appreciated.
Quick question on, you mentioned earlier, what I wrote a note on this one, where's the example? Do policies. There are items that will require an official response, like the composition of the board. What's it called? Is there anywhere in the timeline that helps us address those items that, kind of may appear outstanding where we still need to address it in some way?
Yes, and I'll make it a little bit I'll call it out a little bit more specifically as well, but we need to really identify all of those issues at the beginning of 2025 so that when the committees are meeting in the spring, those are on the agenda. I think
Got it. So
actually,
yeah, so it falls to that deadline, like just whatever it
yes.
is by that, what's it called? By that, I got it. I see what you're saying.
Yeah, and we'll include in the February board meeting, we'll have another update on the remaining issues, and we'll call them out very specifically just so the board can see it. There's because some of the issues have been addressed and we've got responses that we can draft, but we've got like the board composition. We need a board position on that matter, so we'll call those out specifically just so the full board's aware.
Okay, thank you.
No questions on my end. I just want to say thank you for that.
Yeah, I think the timeline looks great. Thank you. And can't get ahead of this far enough, it seems. The only suggestion I have, if I recall, and I don't see it on the is that the hearing is generally like first couple months of the new year.
It's like February, is it? I
Yeah,
remember
like
it being
February, March.
Yeah.
I think we have it there as March.
There, 26.
Yeah, I'll adjust that a bit because it's either going to be February or March. It kind of, it's a little, they haven't released any of their calendars for 2026, but it's going to fall within right around that time frame. And I didn't call it out specifically in the timeline, but one of the most helpful things for the board chair as they're preparing for that hearing is to attend the mock hearing before DCA. Because in many cases, DCA exec team gets together and kind of helps grill the executive officer and the chair and does a mock hearing. It's very helpful for preparing and being ready and practicing that introductory statement. So I'll actually include that on there as well so that the 2026 chair is aware of that participation kind of opportunity.
Yeah, what I was gonna mention is that we generally do our elections around October and bring in a new chair in January. And a lot of the preparation would start well before we know, who's in the election and who gets, who's nominated. And so maybe when it goes to the full board, some suggestion that if somebody is considering running for chair of the board, that they follow this along very closely leading up, well in advance of just the election in October. And also, yes, the mock hearing was extremely helpful, very helpful. Yeah, but it looks great. Thank you for that.
Can we include the mock hearing kind of on the calendar, even if it's like a placeholder date for now? I think that would be good just to kind of know what, especially if we have to work towards a date and there's outstanding items.
Yes, I'll add that.
And will the different items, I imagine a lot of the different items that are going to start to be included in the draft is going to find its way also into committee meetings? Or do we see this more as a, what's it called? A board meeting thing, or all board meeting thing versus committee thing?
I think it would work well, and I think it would work well to divvy up the report for the different components because there's different sections of the report that directly correlate with our committees. So the enforcement section of the report or the licensing, probably not a bad idea to build in prior to that July kind of full board preview of the issues is maybe that those spring, early summer committee meeting dates to get that portion of the draft ahead of committees so that they can start talking about those issues. Otherwise, we would just be basically circling them back in the fall. So yeah, we'll build that in as well.
Okay, good. I was just kind of like, it's like July. I'm already thinking it's like, okay, Q1 is going to happen, and then it's going to be gone, and then we're going to have to be where we identify all the things, and then we really just have Q2 to both draft and review, so that we can have a productive board meeting in July. I think what else is there in the timeline? I also saw that. Let me go back to it. A number of items is committee chairs and exec officer. So for those, is that really, for those particular items, do we see those as just kind of, I would say, separate working sessions calls, or do we see those as just more of kind of the divvying up of work?
There definitely needs to be collaboration there. So either
I wasn't sure how we can
emails.
make that work.
Yeah, definitely kind of individualizing it to what works better for the chairs, but definitely kind of open communication on those issues and kind of shared responsibility for making sure that that we get them done. But yeah, definitely collaboration there with the chairs.
Are we, I'm not sure in terms of system security, but are we able to do just kind of shared documents if that's the case? Or I'm not sure, maybe this is a Sabina question. Are we allowed to be, I would say, the three different committee chairs allowed to be on a call at the same time and have it be a working session?
This is Sabina. Can you hear me?
Mhm.
Yeah, so remember our Bagley Keene rules. We, in order to have not to have a public meeting, it has to be less than 3 people. So like 2 chairs can work on something together, but remember we also have to be very aware of what is called a serial meeting, right? One person talks to the next person talks to the next person, right? And that's not allowed either. So the best would be for each committee to, work up their documents or maybe their answers to each section questions. And then, Ms. Walker would be compiling that and then sharing it with the next committee. And then, and then eventually with the full board. Hopefully that makes sense.
That does make sense, yes. So it's kind of going back to what Ms. Walker was saying around really just delegation and divvying up the work. Thank you. Right. Those are all my questions. Anything else? The rest of the committee? All right, let's go ahead. Moderator, can you open us up for public comment?
We are open for public comment on agenda item 5. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the agenda?
Yes, please. Thank you. All right, moving on to agenda item number 6, review, discussion, and possible recommendation regarding strategic plan objective 3.3 to create diverse outreach plans to increase awareness about the profession and the board's role to build relationships with stakeholders and diversify the profession. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and hand the mic over to Ms. Tammy Pitto.
I'll jump in on this one as well. This one's a pretty straightforward. Well, as a little bit of background information was the board had previously adopted the strategic plan in 2022 with updates around basically increasing awareness of the board and the board's role and facilitating communications with stakeholders. So to that end, in 2023, we had developed a proposed outreach plan to each of our audiences, the general public and our chiropractic patients, licensees, applicants, students, the colleges, our CE providers, and professional associations, and just some other agencies that could be involved with outreach. And we kind of put together what that communication plan would look like. Then at the October board meeting, the board had made a few adjustments to the strategic plan objective. So now that modified objective is to create diverse outreach plans to increase awareness about the profession and the board's role to build relationships with stakeholders and diversify the profession. So to the end of really increasing that diversity in the profession and making sure that we're reaching more groups than just kind of what I would call our standard status quo that we had in the prior plan. We wanted to kind of facilitate just a broad discussion with the committee of looking at the existing plan, where can we enhance it and potentially reach new groups or maybe kind of more in line with making sure our plan's going to support that amended strategic plan objective. So we really wanted to just facilitate a broad policy discussion here with the committee that we could potentially then use to kind of supplement this plan. And the other part of that that discussion on that item is, like I was talking about, with the different committees having a little bit more availability in terms of what they're going to tackle next. I mean, besides sunset review, you can kind of neatly see how in this, even our existing outreach plan, and then as we amend it, the different groups potentially could align with the different committees, and we can kind of work with those committees to develop more outreach materials specific to the targeted groups. So when I'm looking at licensees and applicants, that's a good fit for the licensing committee. Some of our licensee outreach on the enforcement side fits with the enforcement committee. Some of our, professional associations fits well with this committee. So just kind of reviewing that plan, and if we can get some input on the committee on maybe how we can enhance it a little bit further, just in light of that amended strategic plan objective.
So question on the in what's listed out for us, kind of the table of audience by communication plan. Um, are these things we could say that we are actively doing now, or that what kind of we have been wanting to work towards? Like I'm trying to kind of find the best way to provide feedback, um, unless what's about on whether or not we're doing these right now or not.
So this is the pathway. So this is, unfortunately, with our outreach, it was one of the well-intentioned things that we did in 2023 that we hope to implement in 2024, and it seems like we blinked and that year's pretty much gone by. We've done a lot on the rulemaking side and the policy side, but haven't made as much headway as we'd like to see on the outreach. So what this plan here in the materials really shows, was kind of the intention and the path that we wanted to take, but we haven't dug too deep into any of these items, so we can certainly supplement them or amend them quite easily and incorporate new ideas.
And some background for Dr. Sandino. I remember when we were kind of working through this, a lot of kind of the areas where we started to add more and more groups, especially is kind of, I would say, towards the end of the document, of really like kind of bringing in the chiropractic colleges, kind of, I think the continuing education providers. So it was really the chiropractic colleges and the professional associations is where I think there was a lot of new discussion of like, how do we engage them and how do we kind of, they're very much different entities, so we have to engage with them very differently. But I want to say a, some net new ads we had, I would say, over since I had been on the board, over those two sections.
Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
I have a suggestion or an ad maybe in the section regarding the chiropractic colleges. It is, can we potentially think about adding an offer to the chiropractic colleges that we have a board member do a presentation to the later quarter or later trimester students regarding, practicing, preparing for practice, and, things we've done in the past, but more kind of henpecked or um, just kind of found, uh, invites that way, but they seem to go over very well and they seem to be very useful on campuses. And maybe even think a little bit broader than uh, just California colleges, but maybe some of the start regionally, maybe with the West Coast, maybe those are more likely to land in California. Um, and then kind of see how that goes and maybe grow it from there, like maybe a stepped kind of. But I think if we offer, then we can figure out who and when and, who, which any of the board members, but maybe something like that as along with, listening sessions. I think those are good open office hour type of, if we could do that like once a quarter or one, I think that those colleges would love to know that the students can get on and ask questions, especially those, getting close to graduating or maybe even recent graduates. Just one suggestion, but that looks good. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Is there something we can do? And I feel like we're already engaging, what's it called, especially on the licensing committee, engaging the different colleges. Um, is there any, and maybe this is actually a question for Dr. Sandino and Dr. Paris. Would we see a benefit, at least kind of in an add to this type of document, of engaging chiropractic college leadership or what's it called? I don't want the word isn't council leadership, or even kind of the faculty around different topics or around what we're seeing. or is that, or do we see that more of just kind of a because right, because if we're doing something and offering something for students, I can see an opportunity just for to engage, um, kind of another part of the college. Mm.
I'll comment a little, at least what I think my suggestion would be as well. I know when I was a student, we had different organizations like the World Chiropractic organizations and stuff like that. They were like the leadership ones for students who wanted to get involved in politically or by club or stuff like that. I don't know, depending on each college, how much it has changed and what directions they are in, but it would be, worth our while, I think, to reach out maybe to see, do they still exist? Is there something else now? Because I graduated quite a while back, maybe it's a different name now, something like that. And get that communication going. Because I went to Life Chiropractic College West, and I know we were very active and involved. And I imagine that passion is there with the students still. I think they jump all over this to be part of like the bridge, helping get the communication. And the more accurate we are with the students, the more foundation will be strong there. So I agree. I think we could reach out a little bit more maybe to others. Currently, that's all I can think of.
I feel like a lot of kind of where my feedback is going to be more towards like the how of just right. But I think I think the feedback we're giving now and what we have now is a good place to at least start in terms of refreshing.
Yeah, I think so. Have we shared like I think one thing in I don't is like an active point of contact list for the colleges, like so we know who the right person is that we would disseminate information to that. And there might be two people, there might be like a leadership, somebody in leadership administration, and then somebody that's working directly with students. The I didn't even know the presentation we did for Southern California recently. We just did something for students there for everyone on the call, like a week or two ago, and it was kind of an invite outreach. And they had an ethics class where they actually test students on our rules and regs and practice act, and that was unknown to me until they did the outreach. But I think like having that point of contact and something like our occupational analysis, could be a really valuable, really good reason to do that outreach. I don't know if we've kind of disseminated that broadly yet, or, but things like that might be of interest to a lot more than just, um, the students, but also to the leadership there. But anyway, the point being, I don't know if we have like an active kind of contact list for who that person might be.
No, not currently. We have contacts at the different colleges, but not kind of compiling them into an organized list. I think that's a great place to start because that'll help us with knowing, this dissemination list for those updates and that outreach. So we'll definitely put that together for us. And then a couple other items that had come to mind where as we are looking at this plan and maybe there's some additional room. So DCA more broadly, the Office of Public Affairs has been doing some work with potentially getting into items like career fairs. And I think kind of leveraging some of the opportunities that OPA, they're opening doors, so just making sure that we're participating in those events would be helpful. We do need to kind of brush up and get some better outreach materials that we can use. So whether we're there in person or at least some leave behinds that DCA can share on our behalf. We'd like to supplement that because when we're looking at kind of our information for the general public and then also for students, we've got like within our plan, we were initially focusing on chiropractic students, which makes sense because they're the next generation potentially of our licensees, but we've never really done any work at community colleges or maybe like the CSUs for people that might be interested in a career path to chiropractic. It's a very hard lift if we were trying to do it just on our own, but I know DCA has been doing some broader outreach in those areas, so we can kind of do our part and then maybe be part of that conversation. Was another area where I thought we could potentially do some work. And then also for the consumers, they were doing a few. They do occasionally. DCA is doing some outreach type fairs with the public about just getting to know DCA, so making sure we're there. And then more of a long-term goal is maybe looking at some to see what type of like consumer protection or consumer advocacy organizations are out there that we could potentially partner with, and maybe get some input from them on more of our, after we revise some materials, get their input on how they look. So those are a few other kind of ideas that had come to mind as we were looking at this plan.
Yeah, I like it. So DCA would, they already have like a target list of maybe location, like colleges or fairs, healthcare, job fairs, or things like that, that they're already part, like they have a calendar and already a plan for that outreach.
I'd say somewhere in between. They're building it up. They're definitely saying yes when opportunities arise. So as they become aware of events, trying to increase DCA's presence, and then kind of following the models of some of our really large boards, like Barber Cosmetology does it very well because they've got, just tremendous licensee reach. The Contractor State License Board does it very well because they're also quite large. So DCA is kind of taking some of those approaches and then kind of sharing those opportunities with smaller boards. So I'd say it's not a fully built out calendar as of yet, but they've been putting a lot of time and resources into making that happen. So and partnering with some of our smaller programs.
So for us, just making sure we have resource materials that can be included at a minimum, and then maybe potentially putting a face to the profession there if at all possible.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, that's great.
And I just want to piggyback off that. I agree because I live about 20 minutes from Southern California School, and I had no idea either until just now. So that would be nice to be able to, I could go and represent too.
Well, our next, I'll introduce you, and I think if we do another, maybe next, so they were very interested in having us do it again, and it would have been a much better, nicer presentation to have it face to face. And so we'll work on that. Yeah, it's great. I have no other questions or comments here. Thank you.
Me neither.
Me neither.
Okay. All right. So let's go ahead. Anything else, Ms. Walker? Right.
We'll
Okay.
make some modifications to that plan based on the discussion today.
Okay. And then will this do we see this popping up in the different committees, or do we see it just kind of coming back to the kind of overall board?
I think we'll share the updated plan probably for a brief discussion if we have time on the February board agenda, and then from there we can kind of start carving out pieces and looping in committee chairs for areas where they can kind of assist us with the outreach materials.
All right. Thank you. All right. Moderator, can we open for public comment?
We are open for public comment on agenda item 6. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request, you wish to continue with the agenda?
Yes, please. Agenda item number 7, review, discussion, and possible recommendation regarding strategic plan objective 3.5 to improve the board's website by providing informative language accessible content for applicants, licensees, and the public and other stakeholders, and enhancing the functionality and user experience. All right, Ms. Walker.
Sure, thank you. So this is another objective that it was previously on the strategic plan, and then when the board made some amendments to the plan in October, there is the addition of the term language accessible. So we were already working around wanting to develop better materials for our website. But then with that additional piece, it actually fits quite well into some of the ongoing work within our program, but then also consumer affairs at large. So DCA's Office of Public Affairs has really taken quite an interest when it comes to just the branding of the different boards, websites, and making things work better for consumers and everybody else that's trying to access information through consumer affairs. So really excited about the lift that they're going to be doing to assist all of us, particularly us with small programs around that area. Some of the information that we put in the meeting materials was relayed to us from the Office of Public Affairs. One of the things that was really telling for us was when looking at this objective, and particularly looking at the modified objective, is the information that people are trying to seek when they go to our website. According to the U.S. Census data for Californians, 45% speak a language other than English at home, and almost 20% have limited English proficiency. So DCA has a lot of language access resources available for programs when we're communicating with the public. If they're calling us, we have a translation service that we can use in real time. They've actually expanded that now to be able to do real-time video translation services. So that's going to assist our enforcement unit with communicating with people. But where there's a lot of room for improvement, and then they've done some presentations for the different programs, was around websites and just access to information, making sure it's written clearly, concisely, and easily digestible, either in English or if it's being translated into other languages. So DCA's Office of Public Affairs had speakers from the State Office of Data and Innovation come to DCA and do presentations for executive leadership on just what does that end up looking like? What is good customer service when it comes to the information that we're sharing on our public websites? And also educating leaders around California's plain language standard. So after we've kind of had those presentations and those discussions, we've made sure that all of our BCE staff has taken now training in California's plain language standard, which is going to be really key for us as we're developing our new content to make sure it's just written very clearly and easily for particularly like our licensees, but also consumers, for them to be able to understand it. Also, Public Affairs has taken on a new project, which we're really supportive of, which is around standardizing the websites across consumer affairs. Because initially we were going down this path and the strategic plan objective of we've got to revamp all the content on our website, but then we also have to look at the look and the feel and rolling out the new template and making all those decisions. Well, Public Affairs has kind of taken that second piece out of our hands, which we greatly appreciate. They do excellent work, and they want to have a consistent look and feel to DCA services across all the platforms, because there was frustration around, if different boards are having meetings, how do I get to their board meetings page? How do I find certain resources? And they were in different spots across the different, the 37 programs across the department. So Public Affairs is taking the lead on the look and the feel of the website portion. They're going to be doing that, I'd say probably looking at the latter half of 2025 for them to get that done. And our focus is going to be on the content. So we have right now the board only has 2 actual publications. There's the Consumer Guide to Chiropractic Care, and then there's another publication about BCE. So we've got to do some work on updating and modernizing those publications, but then also developing more. So we've looked at a list of what a lot of the other programs have out there, and there's just a lot broader resources around being able to assist applicants with the licensure process, being able to provide licensees with information around just general practice. There's been some discussion with the licensing committee around when we're looking at licensing materials or information for our licensees, going beyond simply giving them what they need to know for BCE's purposes, but being able to connect them with different resources at the state level for just how to navigate, whether it's running an office, what are your mandates as an employer, which state agencies do what, and kind of helping point them in the right direction. So we want to basically be able to give them like a licensee resource guide, if you will, on the website where, of course, prominently we're displaying the information they need to know for their DC license and maintaining licensure with the board, but then also where to look for all the other types of issues that might arise and connect them with the different state agencies. So this is primarily, it's just an update item, mostly sharing that the training that staff's done on plain language, and then just narrowing down our scope of what we need to tackle at the board level, which is content. And that's where we have opportunities for, especially heading into 2025, not making this all fall on this committee, but we can divvy them up just according to, the specific content areas, and kind of help leverage all of our committee work to be able to get this stuff accomplished in 2025. So with that, happy to entertain a discussion or answer any questions on this update item.
How do you see what do you see in terms of how you would leverage this committee for a lot of these topics? Would it be just kind of providing feedback once something is up and ready, maybe in a test environment, or just once it's posted? How do you see kind of us helping with this?
I'd say really reviewing some of the drafts on some of the stuff that's technical. Like, the good thing now about this committee is we've got balance. So we've got a public member and we've got licensees. So when we draft something up, getting direct feedback on tone and clarity on some of the materials, and if it's consistent with what the board would like to see represented on the website or not. So just being able to really get that real-time input from the committee before we go live with certain materials.
Oh, no, that's perfect. I wasn't sure. I was just like, what can I do? What can I do to help here? Okay, cool. And then was there any other was there mention of any other kind of accessibility features kind of outside of I would say language kind of organization and placement that kind of came about? Wasn't sure if anything around color contrast, screen reader capability, kind of anything kind of more going towards the ADA stuff. I'm sure what's it called, the kind of the website, the department that's kind of coming in and making and helping reorganize things really kind of has that in hand. But I wasn't sure if any of that stuff was brought up as well.
So when it comes to ADA accessibility on our website, we already meet a current standard. Our chief information officer signs off on that every year. Sometimes we get questionable when it comes to the color content, and that could be a discussion for another day. But I mean, specifically, BC's logo is borderline. So we may potentially need to start looking at a little bit darker shade of blue, and that likely will be a discussion for 2025 on logos. But with a lot of the accessibility components are there besides just the ease of access and actually reading it. So being cognizant of people with different levels of being able to consume information and making sure it's laid out in a logical manner, but the actual accessibility features are already kind of built in.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I like the template. I think we've talked about this for a while, so this is great news. Really happy to see the template already built out and the consistency, and we've been kind of henpecking away at this discussion-wise, at least for a while. The only question I have is just kind of for my own clarity, but is this essentially like Section 508 Fed ADA law that kind of the state then takes and kind of translates down for our purposes as far as the accessibility and the online?
Yeah, it's similar. It's similar there. So that's where DCA's Office of Information Services makes sure that everything's accessible at that level. But then there's a difference between it being accessible, but then being comprehensible. And that's where we're doing a little work, is making sure that, moving away from a lot of kind of the historical governmental bureaucratic way of writing certain things and breaking it down into, simpler sentences, bullet points, better formatting, just so that content can be easily accessed. Because it's not even simply just just an ADA issue, but it's also an issue of just being cognizant of people's time. People want information, they want it quickly and clearly. They shouldn't have to, kind of really be digging in hard to try to consume information. They should be able to just see it and understand it easily.
And we had talked about previously on this issue, we had talked about, and I don't know if we ever really got there, I think, but we talked about having some data about, you know, clicks and views and all the website metrics, like kind of the Google metric thing. And kind of having that help guide us as to, you know, where content is best placed and, you know, large buttons and things like that. Are we still looking at maybe receiving or seeing some of that from our web pages?
We so when we started this project, we pulled it. We'll make the request to the Office of Information Services for updated data because it's been about a year since we last pulled it.
Yeah.
But what we found when we did that was we were getting frequent hits on our kind of the obvious spots of board meeting information, licensee information, continuing education courses, and things to that effect. The surprising or maybe the problematic issue that we saw with that data was not a lot of engagement with our consumers section of the website. So that's where it was driving that we need to have more resources for people that are seeking chiropractic care or have already received it, and just getting a lot more that we can share with the public and drive engagement in that area. Because we've got the people that have to do business with us are clearly using our website, but how do we reach other people where we could provide better help to them through enhancing our website?
And maybe this as a suggestion, maybe like there's some collaboration potentially with some of the colleges that are in the business of, you know, or maybe F4CP or groups like that that kind of have a sense of like what attracts consumers to, or what's the material they want to kind of look into. But okay. Yeah, it looks great. I was really happy to see the link, and the just the template looks so much like it would be an improvement just to get us into that template and have that as our webpage. I have no other comments or questions. Thank you for that.
My only comment is that it looks good too. So thank you guys for all the work. Appreciate it.
With no additional comments, can we open it up for public comment?
We are now taking public comment on agenda item 7. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request, you wish to continue?
Yes, please. All right. Agenda item number 8, future agenda items. What's it called? Oh, sorry, I was reading. There's a note here. Members of the committee and the public may submit proposed items for a future committee meeting. However, the committee may not discuss or take action on any proposed matter except to decide whether to place the matter on an agenda of a future meeting. So opening it up to the team, are there any items you'd like to bring up for a future agenda item?
I do not have any. I felt like we had a lot in the call though.
Yeah.
There's a lot ahead. So yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You not had anything either.
Nothing either. All right. I'm already assuming that the sunset review deliverables and timeline is just going to be an ongoing thing in this committee of us, kind of in terms of oversight. And yeah, I think that's it. Nothing from us. So we'll go ahead and put it out for public comment.
All right, we are taking public comment on agenda item 8, future agenda items. If you'd like to make a suggestion, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request, do you wish to continue with the meeting?
Yes, please. All right, agenda item number 9, adjournment. It's called, I officially adjourn the meeting. It is, what's it called? 4:27, And what's it called? The meeting is adjourned.
Does it need a second or we're done?
Oh, no. No need for votes. No need for anything.
Thank you.
Every
You
time we
can
do
though.
that,
You
we
can.
can,
though.
Second, I
but
second.
it is
You
not needed.
can.
We got David on this committee, so we never know.
Well, thanks everyone. Appreciate you all.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for all the hard
you.
work for this meeting. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.